Ray's going to come up and give a report really from the subcommittee on global church planting, which he chaired. And so I asked him to come and let us know the work that they have done over the past really year or so they've been going. So come on up.
Thanks, Jude. It's my privilege to bring greetings from the subcommittee. It's been a wonderful time. So just to give you some context here, in case you weren't aware, so last year the board approved the following motion, whereas a global church plant is part of the 10-year plan, and whereas a global church plant will require a significant amount of preparation, and whereas a global church plant will impact our philosophy of missions, it is moved by a committee made of elders, staff, and congregants selected by the chair of the committee, who is appointed by the lead pastor, is created to, 1, begin preparations for a global church plant, and 2, reevaluate our philosophy of missions in order to make recommendations to the board should any changes seem necessary and beneficial. So that's where we came from, just to kind of give you some context. So last September, we put together a subcommittee, which was made up of myself, Dave DeSmit, Lyle Mex, Rob Magwood, Megs, Kevin and Chris, Dave Hebert, Josh and Esther, Al Bulkart, and Deb Wilkins also served as part of that subcommittee as well. This team was absolutely incredible. I do have to say, they were absolutely incredible. We had some great times together. We even shared a meal together. We got together every Tuesday as much as possible to pray over Zoom for the subcommittee, for global church planting, for our missionaries abroad, and so forth. So tonight, I'm here to just kind of give you an update. So since September, our group has met on several evenings to do this, and again, we're very committed to trying to figure out what that looks like. And let me just say this, as I said to the board last week, one thing we realized very early on was there were two ways to do this. Way number one was a checkbox that said, "Hey, everyone, we've planted a global church," and you just kind of do it that way. Or way number two, which we realized was the way we wanted to go, and that was we need a culture of missions. We need to do this in a manner where our church, our congregants are just on board and just want to be a part of what this global church plant looks like. So in our early days of discussion, we actually focused heavily on the second part of that motion that was from September, and that was in regard to the philosophy of missions. And so we actually had a couple of meetings around this, because philosophy of missions is a huge deal when we're thinking about planning a global church plant. So the subcommittee posed some questions back to the elders, and the elders passed the following motion. The motion was, the board acknowledges a general consensus regarding a missions philosophy outlined in the IMB booklet Foundations, that's this booklet here, and will therefore employ it as a guiding document for our global church plant planning and preparation until such time as WLA formulates the unique philosophy of mission. So if you were at Kaporis, you would recognize this book, because this was a book that Zane Pratt donated to each participant. And Jude mentioned, there's a few books up here. So if you do want a copy of this, there are some books up here that you can grab. So there's a key part in this book that we really clung to, and on page 25 of this book, it talks about 6 key areas of the missionary journey, and the areas are as follows: entry, evangelism, discipleship, healthy church formation, leadership development, and then exit. And it was almost like a diagram of a circle that really just created the formation of the missionary task. So with that in mind, so after we got through this philosophy of missions discussion, we spent the last number of months dreaming, brainstorming, and praying about what it might look like to plant a church globally. We also, just so you know, as part of our meetings, we had very meaningful discussions with several different people, including the Christian Missionary Alliance. I spoke with Darren, who then forwarded me on to Damien Lee, who's in charge of missions for the Christian Missionary Alliance. We spoke with Damien. We spoke with Riley Barnes from Capitol Hill Baptist Church, which you be familiar with 9 Marks, and a group of us elders go down there. It's a wonderful church. And then Zane Pratt, specifically, who came here and spoke at Kaporis. We actually did a dinner afterwards and had a really, really meaningful dialogue with him. Just some amazing times. So Last week, we as a committee, we presented our list of recommendations to the Board of Elders, which they accepted tonight. And so I just want to take a brief moment to share what those recommendations were. And I'm not going to get too much into the weeds, but I just want you guys to know where we're at in the recommendations that we made. So there were 3 recommendations and then kind of a sub-recommendation on top of number 3. So recommendation number 1 was this. Toward the vision of participating in a healthy global church plant, we recommend Westland Alliance Church conduct research to identify a short list of trustworthy partner organizations. So we recommend conducting research to identify 2 to 4 trustworthy, like-minded organizations with whom WLA might build a strong, clear partnership with to participate in a global church plant. Okay, so that research would obviously include the Christian Missionary Alliance as a partner organization as well. So our next steps that we recommended were to basically refine and clarify our vision for participating in this global church plant, refine and clarify our criteria for partnership. So we want to make sure that our partners are in alignment with our doctrine, philosophy of mission, and desired outcomes. If that partner is not in alignment with what we've defined as our philosophy of missions, then it just wouldn't work. Initiate communications with several possible partnership organizations, including the CMA, and then cultivate awareness and support throughout the congregation. That was recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2. Toward the vision of participating in a healthy global church plant, we recommend WLA develop further support for existing and emerging global workers. So that means that we would initiate and maintain a program to intentionally support members of our congregation as they discern the Lord's call and as they prepare to fulfill that call, which is amazing. So our next steps in that would be to develop and extend a clear support during this discernment phase. Where is God calling us to serve with whom? To develop and extend support in preparation for cross-cultural service, to initiate planning for a possible financial support in global church planning, and to strengthen our support of existing global workers, both on-field service and in home assignments. So that was 1 and 2, which leads us to recommendation number 3. And so this is the biggie that comes out of 1 and 2. Toward the vision of participating in a healthy global church plant and for the benefit of advancing our vision to be a healthy, missions-minded church, we recommend WLA establish a standing missions committee. This standing missions committee may be made of members, staff, and or elders from the congregation with experience and vision for missions and would maintain alignment with WLA leadership, pastors, and elders. And just to note that this missions committee may include members of our existing subcommittee. So out of this third one, our preliminary mandate for this missions committee would be 5 things. 1, to establish a clear mandate for what the standing missions committee is to do, and that would be approved by the elders. So this is a committee that would answer to the elders. Number 2, we would continue to advance and participate in the global church plant. So we're going to keep advancing that initiative and figuring out what this global church plant looks like, which we've defined in 1 and 2 over here. We would identify existing or new partnerships that could be leveraged to engage in global church planning. They would conduct an initial broad audit of WLA's present engagement in global missions, leading to further recommendations and initiatives. And then 5, continued development of a culture of missions at WLA. So again, we're back to that first thing I said. We don't just want to check a checkbox to say, hey, we've done a global church plant. We want our congregation involved heavily in what this looks like. We want our congregation to feel it. You know, it can't just be something that we say, oh, cool, we've planted a global church. No, we want our congregation to feel it. And then 3A was simply because we have such a great relationship with JSAC and they're a ministry of WLA. We would establish a joint standing missions committee together with JSAC, and given our close service together with them, we recommend building the standing missions committee with members of both congregations to pursue the common vision while providing assistance to support both churches. So that brings you up to speed. Again, the board approved this report last Wednesday, and at the board retreat in August, I'll actually be putting forward a motion to create that missions committee that came out of number 3. And while we don't desire the missions committee that we're hoping to establish to be a massive committee, if over the summer that you specifically feel called to be on this committee, please reach out to me and let me know. And I think that's all the time I got. So if maybe I have time for 1 or 2 questions if there are any. Otherwise, I'll pass it over. Any questions? Going once, going twice, Ron?
Anyways, like you're
probably put a link in our email to a document online. I'm looking for Dave.
He's up there.
Dave, can we do that, maybe? Okay, so that's a good idea.
Yep. Yep, great point, Ron. Okay, thanks very much.
I'd like a volunteer. I would ask if there's someone out there who would like to say a quick prayer in regards to our plans for global church planting. I didn't warn anyone, but is there anyone who will volunteer to pray? Thanks, John. Amen. Looking back over the really past 6 months, we have had members and associates join over that time. At the annual general meeting in March, I announced all the new members and associates, but that was from the previous year. So these would be people who are new members or associates since January 1st. So they include Doug and Stephanie Vanderschaff, Ed and Vivian Kwahiensen. Now, Ed and Vivian are sitting right here. Just wave so people... Ed and Vivian have been coming not really that long and became members fairly quickly. So fairly new, but now you know Ed and Vivian. Make an effort over the next couple weeks when you see them at church to say hi and get to know them. We're so thankful for them. Tim Scribe has become a member. Joy Zhang has become a member. And Madeline Morris. And I saw Madeline here. Madeline, could you wave? So Madeline Morris is a member as well. And if you don't know Madeline, when you see her at church, make sure you take time to greet her. There's various other people who are in process right now. They may have got their interview and they're waiting for a letter, or if any of you are here, I didn't see any, don't worry, we're still working through it, and there'll be more announced at our next members meeting. I asked one of our elders, Aaron Hagg, to say a quick prayer for our new members and associates. Amen. I'll now ask Ron, our treasurer, to come up and give us a financial report.
So the good news is this is more than you get in the bulletin and much less than you get at the annual meeting. So rejoice with me that in God's faithfulness through you to provide for his work here in this church. You may or may not be aware, depending on whether you do see the bulletin, but we try as soon as we can after the last Sunday, the end of the month, to give you an update for the general offering. And as of May 26th, we're at 95.4% of budget. That represents a shortfall of $24,700. But the fact of the matter is it's better than the past 2 years, and it's about average for the past 10 years. And over all the years I've been treasurer, hey, this is pretty good for the beginning of June, so I'm delighted. What you may not know is that we not only do we put it in the bulletin, but we also put it on our website. So between members' meetings, if you ever wanted to check up, look under giving, and you'll find out where we are in the general offering. I can tell you that we're covering our expenses as they are less than expected to May 31st, and there's a rise and fall, that's okay. We also have money set aside to cover if we ever did have a short-term shortfall. As well, you might be aware of the fact that the roofing project is done. You would have smelled it sometimes during April into May, but we've almost got final sign-off, one more inspection this Wednesday. And if you think of the scope of this work, that's $210,000 worth of roof that is now above your head and above the gym. And we praise God that we planned strategically for it and we were able to pay for it. One thing that you may not be aware of, and we don't budget for it, but Global Missions is giving us somewhat behind where it was last year. Not by much, $32,000 given to $35,000. And so because we don't budget it, it's just a note of encouragement if you think about it. I dare say that part of the reason we might be behind is, praise God, we're sending a youth mission trip, and $36,000 has been raised towards that, of which $22,000 came from the auction dinner. And so if you put the two together, we're actually well ahead of the game. So that's my brief update. I'd be pleased to take any questions if you had any, but more than the bulletin and less than the annual meeting. Seeing no questions?
Thank you, Ron. All right, we will move now to the Teaching God's Word part of our evening together. And I just want to talk a little bit about authority. This came because I recently read this book by Jonathan Leeman called Authority: How Godly Rule Protects the Vulnerable, Strengthens Communities, and Promotes Human Flourishing. And you will see that you have some notes there, some bullet notes just to follow along. And I found this book just excellent. The best book I have read. I don't know that I've read another book focused on authority. You read books on pastoring, you read books on leading, but this is just focused on authority and what it is and how it works from a biblical standpoint. And I found it absolutely excellent. I wanted to share with you 5 principles on how to exercise good authority, and that comes from the middle section of this book. The author, Jonathan Leeman, begins the book with definitions, and I think they're helpful. And so he talks about power being the ability or capacity to do something. That's what power is. When we say that God is all-powerful, then we're saying he has the ability and capacity to do as he pleases, and nothing can stop him. Okay, that's what power is. Now, authority is the moral right or license to make decisions with that power. Think about it like having the right to use the power how you want. And a person who has the moral authority, the right to use the power, does things with those with that power. And so power is the ability or capacity to do something. Authority is the moral right to make decisions and do something with that power. I'm not going to talk about submission tonight, but submission is deferring by moral constraint to another person's judgment and deploying your resource for the sake of fulfilling that person's judgment. That's an interesting definition of submission. The first half is saying recognizing that someone has authority and deferring to them. The next section is interesting because I don't think we often think about that. It says deploying your resources for the sake of fulfilling that person's judgment. So it's not just acquiescing, oh, you're in charge, you're right, we'll do what you want. Submission is actually pursuing that. And so, interesting, I'm not going to talk about it, but I think it's a great definition, and the section in the book on submission is excellent. Let's get to these 5 principles. Now, I want you to be thinking of this in every sense of authority. Your authority as a parent, your authority at work, your authority as leader of a life group or as part of a ministry, whatever area of authority you are in, I think these principles apply, and I think they're helpful. And it may be useful this evening to think about it in terms of the church and the pastor and the elders and the staff and how that works, but I'd also love it if you would reflect on yourself and the authority that God has given you in certain spheres and areas and how that might apply. The first principle that Jonathan Leeman gives in regards to exercising good authority, he says, good authority is not unaccountable, but submits to a higher authority. So good authority always submits to the authority over them. Now, he gives 4 illustrations in regards to this. He talks about Jesus being submitted to God the Father. So even though he was God himself, he submitted himself perfectly to the authority of God the Father. He only spoke and did what the Father taught him, showing that true authority involves submission to a higher power. If we want to exercise good authority, we must be submitted to authority. So think about that. The greatest human and the greatest human authority ever to live submitted himself to a higher authority. That's something to consider. John 8:28 says, so Jesus said to them, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he, and that I do nothing on my own authority, but speak just as the Father taught me. So, good authority is not unaccountable, but submits to a higher authority. The author gives a couple other illustrations, which I thought were helpful. He talks about a symphony orchestra. In an orchestra, there is a hierarchy of authority, really, in terms of how the symphony works. And I actually knew this before I read it in the book because my wife played in a symphony and I understood how certain things worked. But in an orchestra, there is a hierarchy of this authority. And the conductor's at the top, and it's followed by the concert master and section principals and then individual musicians. And everyone submits to the authority over them so that they can play beautiful music. And it's a picture of how good authority submits to higher authority. He gave an illustration of the unaccountable church leader who abuses his authority. He talked about a mega church pastor he knew that he didn't name, who did not submit to his authorities. He didn't submit to his fellow elders and ultimately didn't submit to the congregation. And he intimidated people, he manipulated them, and really he was standing by himself, submitting himself to no one. And, he used this illustration to show that leaders who view themselves as unaccountable and make themselves a law unto themselves will eventually destroy whatever they lead, whether it's a church or an organization or a community. True authority comes from submission to higher authority. And so again, I think that's true in a church, but I think that's true in all the areas of life that we live in, whether it's our family, whether it's work, whether it's school. Similarly, they work on those levels. The last illustration he gave was very interesting to me. And it was an example of submitting to authority. And he talked about a pastor who found out that a mother in his church had physically abused her teenage daughter in a fit of anger. The mom got angry and threw the girl against the wall. And the pastor talked to this woman and said, listen, if you ever hope to regain the respect of your daughter and eventually have her willingly submit to you as her mother, then you need to submit to the authority over you. And that may include the police or child services. And you need to do that willingly. Not to mention the authority of the church, who this had brought attention to. And it was a wonderful story because the mother did that, of course, repented of her sin, sought to reconcile with her daughter. And the author shared that they had a good relationship again. And he thought it was primarily because the mother decided to submit herself to the authorities in her life. And that was very helpful. So some excellent examples, and I thought very helpful in regards to the first principle. The second principle, good authority doesn't steal life, but creates it. We hear from Moses in regards to the Garden of Eden that God blessed Adam and Eve and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth." We hear from Paul that if we endure, we will also reign with him, meaning with God. And we hear from the Apostle John, "By your blood you ransom people from God, from every tribe and language and people and nation, and you have made them a kingdom of priests to our God, and they shall reign on the earth." That's Revelation 5:9. Let me read a longish quote from the book, but I think it responds to these three biblical verses and speaks to the principle about good authority creating. God created Adam and Eve to be a king and queen, to rule. That's what the first verse above says. As it turned out, however, they didn't rule on God's behalf like they were supposed to. But fast forward to the end of the Bible, and we discover that somewhere in between the bad beginning and the good end, God makes sure his people turn into the right kind of kings and queens. That's what the second and third passages above say. The Greek word translated as reign in those two passages is the verb form of the word for king. A slightly more formal translation of these verses would be, "We will also be kings with him, and they shall be kings on the earth." These latter two verses are talking about Christians. Christians in the new heavens and the new earth will be kings and queens together with Christ. If you're a Christian, this is your destiny. Amazing, no? The principle to observe here is that good authority doesn't steal life, it creates it. It's a principle we learn by looking at God himself and how he uses his authority with us. He created us to be kings. Yet even when we failed, God spent thousands of years preparing our coronation ceremony anyway. And then he wrote a book about it. So we see in God that his authority, right, the power that he has and is rightfully his to do things as he pleases, that he used that to share his authority with those who were under him, that he used it to create life and give opportunity. And so I think that's helpful. That might be something to consider as a parent, as you think about being an authority over your children and what it means to create life for them and not steal it, and give them opportunities to have authority as well. Principle number 3, good authority is not unteachable, but seeks wisdom. Proverbs 2:7 says, "Fools despise wisdom and instruction." Proverbs 12:15 says, "The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice." Luke 2:52 says, "And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man." Even Jesus, as we learned when we went through Luke, had to attain wisdom. He wasn't, I'm not going to get myself in trouble here. I'm not even going to finish that sentence. He, as he matured as a human being, had to attain wisdom. He had to learn things from people. And so how much more do we need it? Seeking wisdom is a sign of humility, and humility is always something that looks good on those with authority. Wisdom should be taught or should be sought from those above and below. I put above and below in questions. I'm thinking about an authority hierarchy as opposed to a value hierarchy, right? There's people who are above us in authority and people below us in authority. And we seek wisdom from both of them. One of the things I talk about, we as a staff talk about in regards to discipleship, particularly when maybe a younger Christian is looking for someone to mentor them, an older, more mature Christian who can walk with them and teach them and mentor them. We remind them that discipleship always happens both ways, right? So a good discipler is discipled by the one he is discipling. And so even in that structure, we see that a more mature Christian can get wisdom from a less mature Christian. Principle number 4, good authority is neither permissive nor authoritarian, but administers discipline. To this, the Bible speaks to parents. Whoever spares the rod hates the son, or hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him. The Bible speaks to the church in 1 Corinthians 5:2. Let him who has done this be removed from among you. The Bible also speaks to the government. Romans 13:4. If you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. He is a servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. And the Bible speaks to this in regards to the Lord as well. In Hebrews chapter 12, we read, for the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastises every son whom he receives. It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? For the moment all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. The author says this, without the power of discipline, authority is toothless, even substanceless. Take away someone's power of discipline, and you effectively take away their authority. Authority, remember, is the moral license to make decisions or give commands. Those decisions or commands mean little if the authority can't enforce the decision or command. The threat of discipline gives authority its power, its teeth. Now, I had an interesting illustration as I read this. It occurred to me because this really explains why I became a teacher and why I was willing to leave teaching. When I was in high school and at a point in life when I needed to decide what to do with my life and where I was heading, I remember very clearly making a decision that I wanted to be a teacher. And I realized I wanted to be a teacher because I had some teachers in my own life who were very influential. They played a big role in my life and had a big impact in my life. And I thought, I want to do that too. And so, of course, I had a little detour and played a little bit of football. But after football, I became a teacher. And I wanted to be a positive influence in the life of students. Very quickly, one of the things that I saw happening over my years as a supply teacher, I supply taught for 14 years and then basically full-time for 6 years, was that over that time, the authority of teachers was continually being undermined and it was being lessened. As I saw that, it occurred to me that my ability to be a positive influence in these students' life is going to be continually minimized as that happens. Now, Rob, you'll know this, and other teachers here. There are students, they're rare, but there are students who know that you want the best for them. And if they will listen to you, they will be helped in life. But there's very few of them who know that. And so your authority as a teacher and the discipline that you can bring to bear in that situation helps you influence them, I would hope for good. There's other teachers here as well. But once they don't have to listen to you anymore, for many of those students, I would say most of those students, your ability to positively influence them is going to be deteriorated. And that's what I felt happening. And that was one of the things God was working out in my heart when I came here and did the apprenticeship. And so I think that's true in the case of the principal, and it's true in the case of good authority needing to administer discipline. Let me keep moving here. Principle number 5, good authority is not self-protective, but bears the cost. The author writes, a vital part of ruling like Jesus rules, then, is being willing to bear the costs of others' mistakes, stepping in to absorb the consequences of their sin, or simply carrying their burdens even when there is no moral dimension. And so again, the author points us to Scripture. We are to bear the cost like Jesus. In Philippians chapter 2, verse 5 through 8, we hear, "Have this in mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. And being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross." Now, understand our bearing of the cost when we're in leadership does not atone for sin. It does not save anyone. It does not reconcile them to God. It does not give them eternal life. But our bearing the cost as those in authority is a picture of Jesus' work. And to exercise authority like Jesus exercised authority means to pay the price, to take that cost upon yourself as a leader. Now, I have two people in my life who I could point to as great examples of that. My mom is here in the back row, Pat McCormack, and my wife, Nicole. These are people I would look to who have paid a great price in my life and in the lives of their children as authorities over them to see that their authority was one which paid the price, took the burden of the cost of many things that those who they cared for, their children, might flourish. And so I'm grateful for them. And so let me finish just with a summary. 5 principles on good authority. Good authority is not unaccountable, but submits to a higher authority. Good authority doesn't steal life, but creates it. Good authority is not unteachable, but seeks wisdom. Good authority is neither permissive nor authoritarian, but administers discipline. And good authority is not self-protective, but bears the cost. I would highly recommend this book. If I was a better planner, I would have given some of these away, but I don't have any more than this one I read in. But if you're looking to read up on that, highly recommend that book, and hope this teaching was encouraging. We got to move on. I'm going to ask Graham to come up now as we go into the section of our meeting where we anticipate God's work, and he will give us a report on leadership development. He just said I was way past my deadline, but I didn't get to preach today, so.
We did not plan that out well, but that's okay. Hey, really thankful to have an opportunity for a few minutes to give an update on some of the leadership development steps that we've been taking behind the scenes. Let me just catch you up in case you aren't familiar. We have a 10-year plan, and part of that 10-year plan is to develop leaders in our church. One of the things that we know as staff is that we as a church have been blessed immensely with great leaders. Our benches are deep. It is amazing to us and sad to us to hear churches tell us all the time how they do not have people who can preach. They don't have people who can teach. They don't have people who can serve. They struggle finding volunteers, and we have incredible blessings in all of those areas. And we recognize that that is something that we've been given as a gift from God, and we also want to steward that gift from God. And so we came up with some plans to put some of that into action. If you are a woman and you are a member of the church, you would have received from me about a year ago a survey. And people were like, oh, there's a survey about women from Graham. And the questions that we were asking was just to sort of get an understanding of how women in our church who are members were feeling about opportunities, how they felt they were being developed, how they felt they were maybe being hindered, how can we do a better job of that, and to ask for lots of ideas. And we got lots of ideas. Lots of suggestions. And so we said, well, one of the things we want to do is we want to start training and equipping not just the men, but also the women in our church of how they could lead better. And so part of our leadership steps going forward will be to develop a pathway for both men and women to be trained and equipped really well going forward. We're going to be creating something called learning labs. And the idea behind these is to be very practical in developing the tool belt of the leaders that we have in our church. It'll be people who have been maybe here for decades, but maybe they've never been taught how to teach the Bible before. They've just sort of figured it out on their own. Maybe they've never been taught how to read the Bible themselves, and they've just figured it out on their own. And there's lots of good things that they've likely learned along the way. But we want to make sure that we're not neglecting, encouraging the saints in our church who've been blessing us so immensely. So we're going to create a learning lab pathway every year for people in our church who are members to participate in. They're going to participate at the beginning of the month. So let me be very clear about the fact that I recognize more than most how busy our schedule at the church is. So let me just say, I hear you. We're going to try and combine a couple of things that we think people really like with something we actually think could give them some joy and some laughter, but also some equipping at the same time. So we're going to start partnering together with things like Soup Sunday. Or Soup Sunday has been something where we've had over 100 people come and just eat soup and be in fellowship together. We're going to start creating learning labs that are going to happen right after Soup Sundays. We also have membership meetings that we would like to see more members participate in. And so we're going to create membership training opportunities around these times as well. And this is one of the reasons why Jude is doing a great job in teaching about some of the aspects of church life that we want to be teaching people in at membership meetings. So we're raising the bar in things that were already on the calendar. And so we hope that that will encourage people to participate, but also be an encouragement for us to see them grow and develop as leaders in our church. Let me give you an example of a couple of things that will be a part of Learning Labs every year. Every year in Learning Labs, we will have a Learning Lab that is about some of the counseling needs that are in the life of leaders. Leaders today are always dealing with people who are struggling in life, whether it be with mental health, emotional crisis, or people who are just going through stuff. And we need to be equipped as leaders to know how to handle that, know when it's not our job to handle that, but also just how to walk alongside people and encourage them and support and pray for them. So we're going to be doing every year a partnership with our True North Soul Care. They will be taking one of the learning labs and doing a training and equipping part for our leaders. The other part which we're going to do is every year we're going to do a teaching on how to teach or train people how to teach the Word of God better. That is for both men and women. We recognize that women are teaching the Bible in a variety of different ways at this church, and we've never really intentionally encouraged them with that. We want to encourage them that in the areas that they are designed to teach and are equipped to do that very well, we want to encourage that, we want to support that, and we want to give them tools to be able to do that even better. And so as much as we may train ourselves as men at times, we want to intentionally now include women in some of that training. So we hope that that will be an encouragement as well. Other areas, for example, and Jude was challenging Barry and I, who've been working on this, he challenged us to look 5 years down the road. So we've got 5 years of learning labs mapped out, which was kind of overwhelming, to be honest with you, when I started looking at 2029. But in 2029, because just wait, we'll be doing a learning lab on the fellowship and church life and a learning lab on parenting. But we'll also be doing one on counseling and one on teaching the Bible. And so that's an example that in 5 years, we'll be having those learning labs set up already. We'll have people who are trained and equipped to teach us well as leaders. And we hope people will walk away encouraged, refreshed, but also motivated to take some of those tools and put them into practice in some of the leadership that happens in their spheres already. So we're excited that women who teach in children's ministry, men who teach in children's ministry, men and women who teach in youth ministry, men and women who teach in women's ministry and men's ministry, seniors ministry. We're hoping that all of the ways that people lead in this church, Learning Labs will be an opportunity to train and equip the saints for good ministry going forward. That is the first part that I'm going to share tonight. I'd love to open up for any questions if you have about Learning Labs and what they could look like. The dates are mapped out. We'll be looking at the first 2 weeks of each month. We'll either have a membership meeting or a learning lab opportunity. So that's how they're going to play out. The rest of the month is wide open. David. Love it. It's beautiful. Thank you. Good. Perfect. Thank you. Anyone not think it's beautiful? All right. I'll tell you what, if someone asks me a question in the next part, Mac gave me something he found on the floor, and you will receive this as a gift if you ask a good question at the next part. I don't know. It's a trick question. Only Mac and maybe the people around them know what it is. The second part of our development of leaders is this. In light of what Ray was talking about, we would like to plant churches in the future. We'd like to plant another church locally, and we also would like to plant a church globally. One of the things we recognized in our pursuit of planting a church in a healthy way at Jacqueline Street is that there were some things that we likely could have done better beforehand. Part of that was even sending a trained and equipped group of elders with them. There were some gaps, and they've worked really hard, and they've flourished in a variety of different ways, but that was just one of the things that we recognized we could have done better. One of the ways we've been gifted at our church more than most is that we have a deep bench of men who would likely be in significant qualification for eldership. There are men who we'd love to see aspire to eldership. 1 Timothy tells us that it's a good thing to aspire to eldership. Aspiring does not mean you become an elder, but it is a pursuit of being qualified in that way, which is a good thing. And so we wanted to do something specifically for the deep bench of men who are qualified and potentially one day may be gifted to the church as an elder. One of the things we saw a couple of years ago is the board of elders invited a group of young men to come and just watch behind the scenes of what a board meeting would look like. And these men came and sat in silence and obviously in awe. It was a beautiful thing, David. I wasn't there, I wasn't invited, but it was a beautiful thing. And they were able to see behind the scenes to see what a board meeting would look like. Because most people, when they come onto the board, if they've never been on a board before, they would have no clue what that would look like. They have no understanding what the protocol really is. And so one of the things that we recognize is that's not the best way to introduce someone into being a new elder. What better could we do? Well, we could train and prepare them to be called into that position. And so we're going to create a cohort of young men or middle-aged men or older men who will be considered for this program, and we're going to invite them to be a cohort for 2 years, and they're going to walk through a series of books together in a learning cohort. They're going to observe other board meetings and see how the board operates. And then they're also going to be matched up with current board members to have one-on-one discipleship with so that they're understanding why certain things are happening the way they are, or how can I better prepare my life, my heart, for the service of one day being considered to be an elder. And so we're excited to launch this cohort. It'll be starting in September, and we're excited to see where that could go. And we hope that it will encourage young men, middle-aged men to aspire for eldership, but also to be trained and equipped for that position down the road. We think it strengthens our bench, and we're excited to be able to move forward in that direction. Now, does anyone have any questions for that are good? David, don't tell me it's beautiful. That's a statement. Go for it. Yes. Yeah.
How are you going to select?
Great question. So first of all, Mac found a toonie. So you get a toonie, and the collection box is right in the back, just to give you an idea of where that goes. That's a great question. So a lot of the selection will be based on how men have already served in the church. And so we would like to see those men who have already been serving in a variety of different ways, whether it be life group ministry, children's ministry, youth ministry, seniors ministry, men who have already led in a variety of different ways. We also would like to have known their character already as they've participated in membership, participated in different variety areas of ministry, how they've served, how they've led. Maybe they've been teaching in Bible studies. And so we're going to take a bit of a survey for those people who are in those circles and ask them to identify some of those men. So we do have a list right now we're working with. And as we continue to go forward, that list will be added to as more men show themselves in that position as we go forward. You already got the prize. I only got one, just to let you know. That's good. Box right in the back. They'll be together. They'll be the same group learning cohort together. We think that'll be, like many life groups are multi-generational, we think that would be a good thing as well. We don't want to have just one age group, because that's just they can learn from a variety. No, we just got a list, and we're asking them to consider it. It is a fairly significant commitment for 2 years. They're going to be reading a significant number of books. So they've got 8 books to read. They're going to be participating in the learning labs. They're going to be shadowing some elders meetings. We want this to be something that they take very seriously. But we also recognize that's a big commitment for a number of them, especially in family life and job life. So we want them to know upfront the expectations, and so we would just take it step by step with them. Yeah, beautiful. Any other questions regarding that? Steve, was that a question?
Thanks, Graham. All right, we're just about done this evening. I wanted to give the members and associates, and no, if you're an associate, we'll often say members. We're including you as well in that, and that's how we think of you. But I wanted to give everyone a heads up just what the preaching schedule would look like, Lord willing, for the rest of the year. We will stay in the Psalms until September 15th. Now, you may have noticed we started a bit early in the Psalms this year, and we'll go a little later. The reason for that is so that next year, by the end of our time in the Psalms, we will finish off on Psalm 118. So that, Lord willing, the next summer, we will spend the whole summer in Psalm 119. And so it lined up that way, and as I figured that out, that's when I realized, wow, 2028, 2029 will be through the Psalms should Jesus tarry. So till September 15th, we're in the Psalms. Then, Lord willing, we'll spend about 10 weeks going through the book of Zechariah. I've explained to you many times before when I decide how to or what to preach next. One of the things that weighs heavily is different genres in the Bible. So I want to cover all the genres throughout the course of a couple years. And so, we were in Hebrews, which is an epistle. We're in Psalms now, or we went to 1 Samuel, which is a Old Testament narrative. We're in wisdom literature for the summer, as we always do. So we need to spend some time in prophecy. And so, Lord willing, we'll do that. In December, this will be the first time I try an Advent series, and so I'm looking forward to that. For those of you who have experience with that, love, joy, peace, and hope are the themes. You do them the 4 Sundays before Christmas Eve, and so we're going to give that a try. I've never done it before, but that's what December will look like, and I believe on December 29th will be the introduction to the book of Acts. And next year we will start off in the book of Acts. I think it's appropriate, since we were in Luke, to continue on with his work and go to that New Testament narrative. So that's what we have ahead in the preaching schedule. And then quick, in regards to bylaw updates, the bylaws that we voted on last business meeting were approved by Dexcom, and so they are official now. And when we submitted those, they also asked for the rest of our bylaws so they could review them. They did review them, and we're probably going to bring some minor changes to you about some of our bylaws that we have that need to be tidied up. They're not significant. I'll give you an example. One of our bylaws says for the elders to select a lead pastor, he must get 75% of the votes of the elders. And the way that's worded means he has to get exactly 75%. It should be at least 75%. Do we all know what that means? Yes. But it's a small tweak that we would probably bring to you at some time and do a quick vote on that. And there's some other things to tidy up. So just looking ahead, we'll do some work on those things. We'll do that most likely at members' meetings, and we'll give you fair warning in regards to those things. So that's the end of it, anticipating God's work. We're going to finish off with worship and a benediction and a doxology. So I'll hand it over to Dave, and you'll be dismissed immediately afterwards. Thanks for being here tonight.